My name is Saad Siddiqui. I'm the CEO of a company called Bonsai. And what we do is we help publishers monetize their content with commerce. There's a lot of opportunity for publishers to use commerce to their advantage and help monetize their audiences. What we find is that publishers are not retailers and retailers are not publishers, and they have completely different competencies. And that the only way to get them to talk is to work through Bonsai. What we've been able to do quite successfully is kind of broker these three different parties that usually don't get along. And it's not because they don't get along, they just don't know how to work with each other. So for example, when we process an order confirmation for a publisher that's selling a retailer's product, who fulfills the order, who sends the order confirmation emails, tons of questions like that arise. But we think it's all part of the shift for publishers to deploy a commerce strategy. So we're happy to help them work through those challenges. It's difficult, it can be really tedious, but we think there's a lot of upside. And we've seen a lot of success for publishers using commerce as part of their core monetization strategy. So if that means they have to get better at sending emails, they have to do better customer service and support, that's kind of the cost of doing business. So between content, retailers, and the digital media industry, it's really hard to get all three parties to work together. Historically, they've never had a reason to work together. The extent to which a publisher would ever work with a retailer was maybe to sell ad space and vice versa, to buy ad space from a publisher. What we've found is that there's actually a lot of opportunity to allow publishers to deploy their own commerce strategy. So the way we've been doing that is by being the intermediary, providing technology and support services to help publishers build their own commerce strategy. It also requires a lot of work on our part to go out and integrate directly with merchants. So we actually have to go pick up the phone, talk to a retailer, convince them to join our platform, integrate with their back office, and then actually allow for their products to be sold on a publisher's site. So it can be challenging. There's certainly a lot of technology that has to be built to allow that transaction to take place. But the ultimate vision is to allow for any publisher, whether you're a GQ or a small publisher who's blogging about, the best shoe recommendations, whatever the use case might be, allow them to actually embed products for sale and then have a native commerce experience. We think there's huge upside there. The way Bonsai is solving this problem is that we actually go out and integrate with every single merchant in North America and Europe that would be a good fit for our publishing partners. By integration, that means we develop APIs and custom technologies that allow us to leverage the inventory data live of every publisher, of every retailer, So what that allows us to do is essentially take an inventory count from a third-party retailer and expose it to sale on a publisher's asset, which doesn't sound that exciting, but it essentially means that anyone can sell anything to anybody, which is huge democratization of retail. It's very interesting. It begs a bunch of questions about who can distribute what products. So that's one way we're solving, and we're actually integrating directly with merchants so that anyone can natively sell their products. And then for the publishers, we're giving them access to products to sell, which is really, really powerful. I mean, the only way that publishers have been able to use commerce these days is through affiliate links or building their own merchandise. And affiliate links are only semi-effective. They don't really provide the best user experience, and they have a bunch of friction and oftentimes are broken and they redirect people to the wrong places. Whereas merchandise is also super compelling for publishers because it can actually allow them to sell products natively. But there's a demand question of whether or not customers actually want to buy a shirt that has a publisher's name on it. That's a really big question that I'm not sure publishers have been able to answer successfully. So what we do is we allow publishers to sell products from brands that are desirable natively within their experience. Because we think that customers really care about the editorial point of view of a publisher. So if I go to a famous publisher who's an authority on women's fashion, I would care about their curation of the 7 best lipsticks for the season. And we allow publishers to actually use their point of view and their voice to sell products natively without customers leaving the page or clicking on affiliate links. To be plain and simple, the way we're different is that we built up a lot of relationships over the past 3 years with a lot of really, really impressive publishers and some of the most renowned retailers in North America. I think the part that makes us really, really different is the fact that we've actually gone out and done every single integration with every single merchant, which is extremely tedious. No two merchants are the exact same, even when they're all leveraging the same commerce backends like Shopify or Magento. Every single merchant has its own idiosyncrasies, and that can create a custom integration scenario for every single merchant. So the fact that we have 75 plus retailers integrated into our platform means that we've actually gone out and integrated 75 unique times, which is incredibly difficult and taxing to do. So that's really one of the key differentiators, that we have this aggregation of merchants. And then beyond that, there's a bunch of interesting technology we built on the front end that allows publishers to leverage these integrations and build their own commerce storefronts or widgets or whatever the case might be. The inspiration for Bonsai was actually that we started off as a men's streetwear and fashion app, in that young men, primarily 18 to 25, could download the app and receive content, curate content around products that they care about. So essentially kind of like an aggregation of news mixed with a bit of shoppable content. That was really the genesis of the company. What we didn't realize when we were building this mobile application was how powerful our technology was, and the fact that we had done integrations with so many merchants and had so many publisher relationships, that one of our kind of really core anchor partners approached us and said, is there a way that we could leverage your technology on our own platform? And initially we were hesitant because we were so proud of our phenomenal consumer application. Then we realized very quickly that if we had a way to distribute our technology to 60, 70, 100 million people all at once, that all of a sudden our technology had become way, way more powerful. So that's exactly what we did. And since then, we've been working with about a dozen new publishers. We're also embedding our technology within their ecosystem. When we originally began, the gap that we had identified was that there was really no clear mobile commerce winner, and that a lot of e-commerce had been fragmented. So commerce happened very much after a series of retargeting efforts by digital ads and display ads. But Bonsai has always been about reducing time and friction between discovery and checkout, which means that we felt that the discovery process for e-commerce and products happens all the way on one side of the customer journey, and checkout happens so much later. And we have never been able to sit with the fact that they need to be on separate ecosystems and worlds. So what we're trying to do is really reduce that time and friction between discovery and checkout. And whether it happens through a mobile application dedicated to one type of user, or it happens by providing e-commerce enablement technology to publishers, really doesn't matter to us. In fact, all we care about is more people experiencing less time and friction between discovery and checkout. So if this is a better way to do it, then we're happy to do it that way. Recently, we've seen a lot of success with a number of our publishers who've joined the platform in terms of a couple of things. One is the first question that publishers have is, can I even become an e-commerce company or not? And most say absolutely not, because they don't want to get into returns and refunds and inventory and stocking and merchandising and where all the kind of nonsense that comes with being a retailer. Publishers don't really want to participate in any of that, but they do have, in many cases, millions of monthly unique visitors hitting their site, a lot of them with very high affinity to buying products. So we were approached by a publisher called Complex Networks about a year ago with the challenge of, help us build a really strong, scalable commerce strategy. And we want to be able to do it natively within our own experience. So we worked with Complex over a year now, and we've been driving a significant amount of volume to them after we had launched their kind of e-commerce site. And where we're excited to see the relationship go is that we're going to see embeddable widgets inside of content where readers of publishers can click buy from a story that they're reading that may mention a product. So there's a lot of opportunity in that space, but what we're finding that's really, really reassuring is the fundamental question of whether or not customers will buy products from publishers is more or less answered from our perspective. We know that customers will buy from publishers. We know that in some cases they prefer buying from a publisher than going to a retailer site. So these are all early signals that there's a tremendously large market of untapped opportunity where publishers can become entrants in the commerce world in a really lightweight, unique way, where they're not actually investing in becoming retailers or building warehouses or doing anything like that. I think there's a really interesting discussion happening around e-commerce and whether or not e-commerce will continue to look and feel kind of like the way it does now. What I'm most interested in personally is the fragmentation of e-commerce, and we call it distributed commerce, where we will see commerce actions taking place off of proper e-commerce sites. Great examples of this already occur when you go to Google and you book a flight. You actually have an embedded Google Flights widget, which allows you to book a flight and entirely skip the step of going to the travel aggregation site. So what I'm interested to see is to what extent we see this distributed commerce proliferate, and whether or not customers will be comfortable buying products from places that don't look like retailers, that have never been retailers before. I think that's really going to change the supply chain. If you're a retailer, you know that when you buy products wholesale from brands, you're subject to a lot of distribution and selling limitations and opportunities. What I'm very curious to see what happens when retailers start leaning on third parties like us to distribute their products for sale in places where there's maybe less friction and it's more convenient for users, but it isn't the masthead and official site of the retailer. We've already been seeing a little bit of pushback from brands and retailers about how that all experience lives. But ultimately, we exist on a very simple principle that customers necessarily need to have less of their time wasted, and less friction imposed upon their journey. And we think that as long as the customers demand their purchases be done in less time and with less friction, this continuous distribution and kind of degradation of the user journey will continue. And it's just going to become simpler and simpler for users. And whether or not brands are up for that is really up for discussion. But I'm excited to see how the industry, and particularly the supply chain, change their attitudes towards this distributed commerce. Like, can we have a world where name brands do nothing about their products ending up for a Google product display widget? We don't know, and it hasn't happened fully yet, but I certainly see evidence of it in other categories. I've been interested to see how it rolls out in the CPG world and the apparel world.